Hi there, and thank you for joining me for today's live reading of Jake, Billionaire Blind Dates, book number 1 by Toni, Denise, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. Heard you and Celia broke up already, Cade said as he dealt cards at their weekly poker game. Shut up. Jake pulled off his tie with a yank and hung it over the back of his chair where it joined his blue suit jacket. Already? Evan picked up his cards but looked at Jake. How do you even know? Jake looked at his cards. His hand was crap, same as his love life lately. It was in the news. My sister told me, Cade answered as he looked down at his own cards, his dark hair falling forward as he looked down. Cade's sister, Catherine, was always in the know, but was not a gossip about them. Her loyalty was everything to her, and if you had it, she'd defend you forever. Cade Hawkins owned a successful marketing firm, and Catherine did all their internal public relations. She'd helped all of them out at least once. Jake blew out a breath and set his cards face down on the table. There it is, as usual. Every woman he seemed to think was going to be worth dating always wanted their names in the press. No doubt she had painted him as the bad one, no matter that it was Celia's demands for an engagement ring 2 weeks into their relationship that had caused him to break it off. They all wanted his money and the status that came with it. Not a single one wanted to have a conversation unless it was about spending money, and he was so sick of it. What'd she do? Evan scratched his chin and the stubble that he could never keep at bay. He shaved and still had a shadow right after. Surprised me by showing up at the office today with a selection of engagement rings for me to choose from for her. He'd nearly lost his mind on her, but had managed to calmly ask her to leave and just told her they were through. She, on the other hand, threw a fit. Riker, usually silent, let out a long whistle and rocked back in his chair, lifting the front 2 legs off the ground. I don't know why you keep trying to date these chicks. Too much hope. He rolled his sleeves up, preparing to play, showing his tattoos. The elevator chimed and Luke exited, completing their group. What'd I miss? He asked as he let himself into Jake's kitchen, grabbing a beer from the fridge. Luke was the youngest of them, and couldn't grow a beard if he tried. And he had tried. They'd teased him relentlessly. With dark hair like most of the men there, Luke was also tan, always, a benefit of his daily runs at the park. Help yourself, Jake called. Luke grinned, by far the happiest of the group. Of course. He took the last seat at the table. You started without me? He teased. You were late, Riker grumped. I had a meeting I couldn't miss. Work? Luke threw at him. Jake leaned back in his chair and looked around as the banter at the table continued. He had a penthouse apartment, open floor plan, magnificent view, everything he was supposed to want, but something was still missing. He was tired of meaningless relationships and bullshit conversations. His kitchen was directly in his view, and he took a critical eye towards it. The stark white cabinets shined against his dark walls and stainless steel appliances. The granite countertops had been a feat for him to get. The bar was one massive slab and had taken engineers to figure out how to get it up to this floor. They'd managed it. Money always saw the impossible managed. He rarely used the kitchen, though, as he was hardly ever home. No woman had cooked in it either. He held all dates far from his private sanctuary until he determined they were not looking for money or fame, and sadly, no one had met that bar yet. Earth to Jake, Evan called, pulling him from his musings. He sat forward and picked up his cards. Sorry, is it my turn? He shuffled them, hoping for a better hand as he checked the cards on the table. After debating a few times, he sighed and said, I fold. They went around a few times and Riker took the pot on the table. They all had more than enough money to lose to each other every hand, but they never bet real money. Riker, who won more than anyone else, didn't gamble, and none of them had anything to gain by taking each other's money, so they played for chips and bragging rights. Deal me in, time to take 'em down, Luke added cheerfully. In your dreams, kid, Riker threw at him. Luke shifted in his seat. You'll see. Riker had called Luke kid since they'd added him to their group a few years ago. There was little else that annoyed Luke as much as being called a kid, and Riker knew it. Knock it off, Cade told Riker. The 4 of them all turned toward Riker, the only one that was sitting there in a black shirt. Riker was the most quick-tempered of them, too. He hadn't even wanted to be part of their group at first. Evan had managed it when Cade, Jake, and Evan were ready to abandon him. Their group had been a bond that had helped them all manage the politics and financials of their growing companies. Every man at this table had a net worth now of over 7 figures, and with that, they only found additional problems. What about blind dates? Evan offered Jake as the game continued. Riker snorted and Luke straight laughed. No, really, there's that new place down now that does actual blind dates. You don't even get to see each other. Evan placed a bet after checking his cards. It's not a terrible idea, Cade said at his turn. Jake raised an eyebrow in question. Of all the people to be on board with it, it wasn't Cade he would have suspected. See? Evan smiled. It's the perfect solution to our problems, Cade shrugged. He was selling it, but was far from enthusiastic about it. I'm not here for spectacles, Jake folded again. How can it be any worse than what you're going through right now? Luke asked. Jake looked to Riker for help, who only shrugged. It seemed it was up to Jake to explain how ridiculous the idea was. What would happen the moment she sees my name? She'd look me up and we'd be right where I am now. No difference, just more hoops to jump through. He'd remembered reading about the blind date restaurant opening up, but hadn't really looked into it. Evan took the pot, and the game paused as he shuffled cards. That's the beauty of the place. I'm considering investing in it, he started dealing. They don't give any of your information to each other. You can elect to chat in their app before the date if you want, or you meet them in the dark at the restaurant, and you get to decide when to reveal yourselves or to stop dating. You know entirely too much about this. Cade, like the rest of them, had been staring at Evan since he launched into the explanation. Evan was unbothered by the scrutiny. I told you I was thinking about investing in it. Regardless, it solves all the problems that Mr. Hottest Man of the Year is having. Jake groaned. He couldn't wait until the magazine that had called him that came out again in 6 more months to give someone else that name. His life had gotten even crazier since then, and the media never left him alone on a date. It has merit, Riker added, looking over at Jake. Not you too. Jake was growing more irritated. Can we talk about something other than my love life? Not that you have one, Cade muttered. Low blow, Luke scolded. How is Luke the only one on my side? Jake stood, knocking the chair out from under him. He's still enjoying the meaningless sex, Cade answered for the group. Jake ran a hand through his dark brown hair, messing its usually perfect style up. Fine, if I agree to one date, can we just get back to the game? Nope, one from each of us, Evan smiled. 4 dates then, Jake conceded. Plus any you choose through the app, Evan added again, still grinning. I can guarantee you that won't happen. Jake had no intention of looking through a dating app of any kind, not to mention one with even less information than the normal ones. 4 dates, and then no one else butts in again with stupid suggestions. I'll set it all up. Men, email me your pics by the end of next week. They nodded as Jake picked his chair up, sliding it under the table and taking a seat. This was going to be interesting for sure. Hours passed as their game dragged on. In the end, Riker won, as usual. Luke's goal was to take Riker down, and he grew more frustrated every night that he didn't win, although he'd come close tonight. Jake threw the last of the empty bottles away and wiped down the table before dropping onto his black leather sofa and propping his feet on the ottoman he'd argued with his interior designer about buying. She'd practically fainted when he refused a coffee table for this. He told her he meant to put his feet on it regardless, and she'd finally given up. Evan wasted no time and sent him the link for the app for the blind dates the second he'd agreed. He pulled it up and clicked to start the download. If he was really going to go through with it, he figured he might as well research it. It took nearly an hour to put all his information in and take the million-question test that went with it about his likes and dislikes and so on. It was annoying, but when he started paying attention to the questions, he could understand where they came from and saw how the algorithm was going to work. Programming had been what got him to where he was, as the CEO of his father's tech company, Arnoldson Robotics. Unlike many other parents, his father never guaranteed him a position, and so he'd worked his way up from research and development to his current position at the top. Once complete, the app told him to check back in 2 days to allow the system to find a match. The last step was to tick a box if he wanted to be able to chat with dates once they were scheduled. Figuring why not, he ticked the box. He laughed as he set his phone down. At the rate he was going, there wasn't going to be a match for him anywhere. People were interested in his name, the money, and the face that went with it, but few cared about him outside of that. He stood, stretched, and headed for his bedroom. Tomorrow was Saturday, and that meant no suits, which always made it worth getting through the week. It wasn't that he minded dressing the part in his fitted suits, but there was something to be said about jeans and a shirt and blending in. He slid on sweats before crawling into his king-size bed. His room was the only real pop of color in his apartment, and no one ever saw it. He liked things simple and understated in his room, with the exception of the TV that was hidden in the wall behind a painting that slid out of the way with the touch of a button. He yawned as he lay back, watching the ceiling fan spin. Tomorrow he was going to hit up the farmer's market and just enjoy not being the most popular man. Well, he was going to give it a shot anyway. With any luck, he might meet someone among the vendors and shoppers that didn't know who he was and didn't want anything from him. Then he could let this whole blind date thing go and not have to do it. Dinner in the dark, at a restaurant. What a wild concept. It was expensive, too, he noted, and if he invited someone on a date, he had to pay, and vice versa. All in all, it was an interesting business concept, and he could see why Evan had been interested in it.